Well, greetings and salutations, everyone, and welcome back to tonight's bonus upload. Before we jump into it, a couple links. As you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, channel membership, and the merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Links to Patreon, PayPal, and channel membership are in the description below. The merch displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters, Volume 1 through 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeff Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support this channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe. It does not cost you a cent. Click that like button. It takes half a second. If you don't want to miss out on any of the informative uploads I put out daily, click that bell icon, and folks, please leave a comment. Why? Well, because all of these things, they really do help this channel to continue to grow and go. And folks, they definitely matter. Now, everyone, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's jump into tonight's bonus, shall we? So I had a little bit of free time today between visiting my dad at the hospital, checking in on my mom, and well, now I'm going out and going snowblowing because we are officially getting smashed with our first real good storm of the year. Started about an hour ago, and we've already got close to 2.5, maybe 3 inches out there, and it's only been going on for an hour. But I got to spend a little time on a program a friend gifted me, a video kind of editing program, and I played around with this video to look at whatever is in this video to see if we could really figure out if it was truly a cryptid or if it's a man in a suit. I'm going to leave that up to you guys. So let's get into it. Jeff, I want to share one of my most recent experiences with you and your listeners. I live at the back side of a 6,550-acre state park. My property goes back into the woods and butts up against it. I can see the dam from the lake from my backyard. The lake is, I'd say, 3,360 acres, and at this time of the year, late December, the park is a ghost town. There are a few die-hard hikers and a few people walking their dogs on the road and trails, but mostly, the park is empty of any activity. Now, I'm a Bigfoot researcher, and I had a strong feeling about an area in one of the empty picnic areas. I'd caught an occasional eye shine there, but that was no deer, as their eyes here glow in orange, and were too scattered to be a raccoon or any other small critter. I decided to try and draw out whatever was back there. I have a very bright headlamp that has a red strobe feature on it, so I thought this might just pique their curiosity. So one evening at around 11 p.m. I drove to the area, turned off the lights as well as my car engine, and proceeded to red strobe the woods. I would switch from strobe to spotlight and back again to see if anything was looking. About the fourth time I switched to the spotlight. In a very small valley-like area, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. There were at least 14 pair of eyes looking my way. Some were very high, some about mid-tree, and a few very low to the ground. The two higher groups would move periodically behind what I assumed was a tree, then peer out again. The lower ones just stayed where they were, blinking occasionally. I suddenly felt fear that I cannot explain come over me. This was all going to my left, but to my right and behind me were mere woods. I suddenly felt very exposed. I decided the smartest thing to do was leave, and that's what I did. Now I couldn't just let this go, so the next night I went back to the area. I strobed and spotlighted, but saw no eye shine in the place where I had previously seen it. But to my left a little ways were two large red circles glowing. I focused my light on them, but they stayed consistent, no blinking, no moving. I figured it had to be something the park had placed there, a grill or a trash can that had red reflectors on it. But why hadn't I seen it previously? I watched these red reflecting things intently when all of a sudden they went out, and after a second shone again. Eyes. I was absolutely certain they were eyes, but they were so large, and the distance between them was wide. I watched them. They didn't blink again, just stared at me. Now my headlamp light is not incredibly bright, so I was unable to make out the figure, as these eyes were approximately 150 feet away. As I sat there looking at them, a hard feeling or thought came into my mind that I needed to go, and it shocked me, as I had heard nothing but total silence. But it could not be ignored. I'm not suicidal, so I went. As I drove around the circle of the parking lot, I kept my light fixed on them. They never moved. The next day I decided that this was something to be investigated further, so I went during the day into those woods and found a lot of tree talk. For anyone who is unfamiliar with that term, it's what they assemble out of trees, branches, and sticks. They are all wound together and held together in an amazing complex structure. Okay, now I'm really sure that what I've been seeing was not a normal animal eye shine. I started to think there must be a community of Bigfoot or something, some cryptid, back in these woods. And by red strobing the trees, I had gotten them all wound up. I figured the red-eyed thing was not happy about it, but this was way too close to what I look for to let it be. It's what I had hoped would happen after all. So that night I went back. This time I brought a very powerful flashlight with me. I parked my car, rolled down my window, and proceeded to scan the tree line. Nothing at first, then suddenly I spotted two very large, very deep red eyes behind a big tree. These were larger and more red than the previous ones. They were also a lot further apart. I kept my light on them and watched in amazement as they moved from one side of the tree to the next. They soon started to come further out from the trees and seemed to move forward before going back to looking at me from side to side of the tree. I could feel intense anger and frustration coming from whatever it was. In my light of my flashlight, although I couldn't see it clearly, I could see a huge bulk of something. When it moved out and forward, it appeared that its shoulders, massive, it was about 6 feet up the height of the tree it was behind, but when it would come out and rush forward, it looked much, much taller. I sensed that it was extremely angry with me for causing such pandemonium in its group. I felt strongly that it wanted to rush me, but it did not because of whatever consequences that might cause. But I swear to you all that I felt its anger. I decided I had caused enough grief to these creatures, so I slowly pulled away, and I left the picnic area, keeping my flashlight on it the entire time just in case. I've let them go about their business. I have not gone back there at night anymore, but I have gone into those woods during the day, only from a different point. Once, when I was in a ways, I heard to my left about a half a second of samurai chatter. I quickly turned my head as it had been right next to me, and saw nothing. This thought was preceded by the most violent and loud wood knocks across into the other side of the woods I had ever heard. It has been quite the adventure. I've had Bigfoot experiences going back years, but this is the one that frightened me the most. Recently, on the lake, my friend and I witnessed a family of water creatures one night. They kept moving and watching us. Also, as I was watching 4 deer in my backyard, something came out like a bullet of the woods and took off after the largest doe. It could have only been a dogman, as it was so fast it was a blur, and it seemed to pull itself along by its front legs, arms, I don't know. It was so fast that the other 3 deer watched her take off and run, but they never ran. They just stood there, like they were wondering what had scared her. But all of these experiences are for another day. I love your show. Thank you for allowing me to share this with you. Stay aware and stay safe. Now, like I just said at the beginning of that, I am going to be interviewing her later on tonight, and that will be uploaded for Monday morning. Let's get on to today's second subscriber submission. Hey Jeff, I just wanted to tell you about something that happened a long time ago, as well as a more recent encounter. I'm from South Mississippi, but where I grew up was very rural. I lived on a 5-acre property that butted against the DeSoto National Forest. The property belonged to my church, which also had a pretty nice house that was designated for the pastor and his family. My dad was the said pastor. We had one neighbor, and a few more further down the road, but it was pretty wild out there. My first encounter happened when I was 12 years old, although I'd say it was more of a sighting. This was only a few weeks after Hurricane Katrina. Power was still out. So we had this massive wood pile from the property cleaned up. I'm talking full-size pine trees to smaller brush and everything in between that stacked up about 60 feet tall and about 150 feet in diameter. Everything was put by large machinery. As a kid who spent most of my time in the woods hunting small game on the property, this woodpile was perfect as a natural blind. It had multiple little caves that were just big enough to fit into, and some even tunneled around deeper into it. And yeah, looking back, this was incredibly dangerous to be playing in, as anything could have collapsed and nobody would have known the wiser where I was. I was homeschooled, by the way, so I didn't have many friends at the time. Anyway, on to the sighting. So I can't remember the day, but I know it was only a couple of weeks after Katrina, so mid-September, I'd have to guess. It was getting dark, and I was in one of those wood caves I had mentioned earlier, when I noticed what I thought was a horse walking down the path directly behind the property line. There's a path that's like a horseshoe that goes probably about 10 miles around part of the woods and passes by the back of the property. with an entry point at the corner of the property. But something seemed very wrong, and the fact nobody was accompanying it was even more off-putting. It continued on until it came across the entry point of the property, where it made its way through the open gate, and I got a full view of it. Pure, unadulterated terror filled my very being. This thing was only 50 yards from where I was inside of that woodpile, and it was on all fours and started sniffing around. I thought I was screwed, and I thought that it had smelled me. But it made its way over to the sand pile we had on the opposite corner of the property instead and started digging. One of my cats had died after the hurricane, and we buried her there. It was digging her up. I watched it pull the bloated, nasty cat corpse from the sand and ate it right there. I have never been so mortified or terrified in my life. It then proceeded to go back to the way it had come. This took a lot out of me to write. I have never told anyone this because nobody would believe me. If you want more details, get back to me because that wasn't the end of it. I'm just so tired I can't write anymore. Cheers. Oh, sorry, I just realized I didn't give any description, so I'll at least do that. This thing was at least 8 feet tall when it stood up. It was on all fours on the trail and on the way to the sand pile, but made its way back to the wood/trail on 2. I watched it eat my cat with hands, like a sandwich. It was jet black except little tufts atop of its ears, which were like 8-inch black daggers. The hairs on top were gray. It seemed very sickly, like missing fur and mangy looking. It had a tail which seemed about 3 feet long. Part of it had fur, but it was bony looking. Its teeth were very unnerving. They looked razor sharp, but deformed, like there were far too many for its mouth. I don't think it weighed any more than 300 to 400 pounds. I got a good look at this thing through the scope of my pellet gun before it left. I'm going to bed now, Jeff, but I felt I should at least include those details. Feel free to get back to me. I'm actually going to reach out to them. I'm going to send them an email a little later today and see if they'd like to come on and share their experience, because if you notice, they said my first encounter was a sighting. So I'm wondering if there is something else. And I'd also like to hear more about this creature. Very, very a creepy encounter, though. I couldn't imagine watching this thing dig up one of my pets that had died and eat it. I probably would have gagged out loud, and this creature would have found me in my little wood cave. I'm just kidding, but man, that is crazy. These things never cease to amaze me in their what they will do for food, their senses, and everything else. So anyway, let's get to tonight's third encounter. Howdy, Jeff. I want to firstly say how much I appreciate your channel and looking for the truth. I've had a Dogman with me my whole life. It's strange and creepy, but it never tried to get me. My name is William H., and I grew up in Spring Creek, North Carolina, about an hour from Cherokee, and right on the Tennessee border. Deep in the mountains, this area had only been cut out of the wilderness about 70 years ago. My grandfather had stories about Black Panthers they fought when they moved in. Where I grew up, we were poor and worked tobacco. We didn't have indoor plumbing or electricity even in the 80s. When I was 10 years old, we moved to a farmhouse on the property, a serious upgrade in my opinion. My parents, they were hippies and they partied a lot. They often left me home alone because I preferred it that way, instead of sitting in the car at night while they partied with their friends. I was a good old boy, and always went to bed on time and took care. But in the middle of the night, I woke up. It must have been after midnight because I didn't have a clock or anything. I woke up with a feeling I'm in danger, and panic washed over me. Looking at the window, I saw it hunched down peering in at me. I slowly moved the blanket over my face in hopes that it had not seen me as a kid would, but I knew it had. It was watching me. These windows were 6 to 7 feet off the ground. When Dad came home half drunk, I told him about it because I couldn't go back to sleep. He looked out the window and laughed. "Son, if it's gonna get you, it doesn't matter if it's daylight or dark." But he never said there weren't any monsters out there. My grandfather often warned me about boogers and woolly boogers in the mountains, but I thought that was just to scare us kids because we were not allowed outside after dark. A few years later, when I was 12, we had this swimming hole that's sort of a secret among the farmers. Only the locals knew about the place, and a big rock jumped off into the creek. I was having a blast and my parents wanted to leave and go party a bit with their friends. I goofed off and lagged behind wanting to swim and play, but then I realized they had left me. I got scared. Okay, I get it. Time to go. However, climbing back up to the trail to the parking area, I heard a deep bone-rattling growl. I thought it was my dad messing with me, trying to scare me, but it was not. There was a black form lurking in the brush beside the tree. And when I saw it. It stood up, and I freaked. It was at least 8 feet tall, twice as big as me, and built like a football player. I ran as hard as I could. Then I turned and looked to see if I was being chased, and I swear it was exactly the same distance from me, 15 to 20 feet away, but it was in the middle of the trail, and a good look at it. I only saw it before in the brush because it was blacker than the shadows. I didn't see any teeth or tongue. It was just watching me and waiting. And it scared me because I didn't know why it was waiting and not killing me. When I was 14, my uncle asked me to go squirrel hunting with him, and I was down. It's good to know how to feed yourself. We didn't see anything on the mountain that day. The whole place was dead quiet, and soon I found out why. A thunderstorm was moving in, and we decided to haul off and go home. It started to get dark in the woods, and when we walked down the old logging road, we saw it, standing in the middle of the path looking at us. My uncle dropped his flashlight and shotgun, and I thought he just got us killed because I only had a .22 long rifle, and I was not about to shoot at this thing and make it mad. He refuses to speak of it to this day. It shook him that bad. But weird thing is, I saw golden eyes. He saw red eyes. My father used to tease his brother a lot. "Old Red Eyes is watching you." And my uncle hated that, so he never spoke of it. Seems like it came to check on me every couple of years. And I know it's the same one. It's never aggressive or threatening towards me. But it's followed me a lot. I left home to work all over the South, building steakhouses and such. When I came back home after my father had passed and moved in, I saw him again. I was leaving offerings at a stone on the mountain, such as shiny stones and sometimes dried meat. It's always gone. Last month I was feeding the chickens and saw it on the hillside across the creek, far away. Came out and sat down for like 10 minutes to watch me. Then it went back to the woods. I also found 3 walnuts on my porch. The nearest walnut tree is 2 miles away. There's more to the story, but I summarized it and wrapped it up fast. I would not mind talking with you or sharing. I'm too old to care about other people thinking I'm crazy. Well, William H., I am definitely going to be calling you this week and seeing if you'd like to come on. This is another very terrifying experience. Wow. Thank you for sharing that with us. Before we jump into the next subscriber submitted story, I just want to let you guys know that I get your emails. The only reason why I'm saying this is because the first sentence in this. what I do is when I go through my emails daily, I usually wake up to about 120 emails from the time I go to bed at like 3 in the morning till whenever I get up would be like 9:30, 10 o'clock. And then I start working immediately with a cup of coffee. I go through my emails, and any junk email I just delete. And if it's subscriber submitted experiences, what I do is I put them in the star box. And then I go back after a couple of weeks. I do this by myself, you know. I'm running the channel by myself. I'm doing the research by myself. I'm doing the live streams by myself. There's no excuse. I should get to you guys a little quicker, but I just don't have enough time in the day to do everything that I really want to do, you know. On top of homeschooling my youngest daughter, who's 15, and being her dad, only parent in the house, is quite taxing. So I appreciate you guys submitting your experiences to me, and I do appreciate you guys being patient with me, because I do appreciate them, and I will get to them. So I just wanted to clear the air on that. Let's get into tonight's final subscriber submitted experience. Hey Jeff, this is the second email I had sent you, but I understand that you're busy. I figured that I would just go ahead and send you the first encounter I had with what I believe to be a dogman. Although it was late and dark, and I was unable to see much, I felt that it was either a dogman or a Bigfoot, since both are numerous in the area. I'm leaning towards dogman because some of the things my family talked about in the area involving them. It happened about 1:30 a.m. in eastern Kentucky, Appalachia, on a sultry June night, while a friend and I were sitting on my family's porch in the eastern Kentucky mountains. To set the scene, the house sits in what we call a bottom, right next to the Elkhorn Creek in Pike County, Kentucky. The house is approximately 15 feet from the creek bank, and there's about a 15-foot drop down to the water, depending on rainfall and water depth. We were listening to music, Typo Negative, Black Number 1, amazing song and album. Typo Negative's awesome, sorry. To be exact, and we were just relaxing, listening to the night sounds. As we were sitting, smoking, we heard everything just go quiet, and then we noticed what sounded like footsteps in the distance running up the creek. I mean running up the creek, on big, jagged, slippery shell rocks that even an Olympian couldn't balance on, much less run across. Believe me, I know. I've had the hysterical pleasure of witnessing a few try unsuccessfully to prove their athletic prowess on these rocks. As we continued to listen, we thought that, at first, it had to be a man running. We could clearly hear 2 feet splashing through the water, running freight train fast. As it got near to the house and the large back area of the yard, whatever it was suddenly tore straight up that 15-foot bank, and without missing a single beat, tore down the trees, shrubs, and everything in its path. It was pretty terrifying at that point, because clearly this was no man. As the steps drew closer, I looked up just in time to see my friend, the brave soul of a man he was, standing in the closed doorway with eyes the size of juicy cantaloupes, staring at me in terror. He ran and left me. I guess he was just waiting for me to die there by myself. As I stood and started to walk quickly up the 7 steps to the lower level of the porch and the front door, I heard this thing tear back down that 15-foot bank, just feet from the porch, and back into the creek. I turned at the top of the stoop and managed to catch a glimpse of something huge and pitch black running past the house and continued to barrel down to the creek. I couldn't make out any details other than that whatever it was blacker than the blackest of an eastern Kentucky Appalachian mountain night, and that it stood out silhouetted against the darkness. It was huge, way larger than a man. though I can't say for certain height nor weight. And it was running on 2 legs. After I heard it run well past our property and beyond, I decided that I had had enough big black freight train beasts for the night and decided that it was way past my bedtime. Also, I was pretty upset that dude just left me high and dry to face my inevitable death alone. I did manage to pretend to be brave long enough to walk back down the stairs to the porch to turn off the radio, even though every part of my body was screaming to run in the opposite direction back towards the door and the safety of my house. Anyway, I figured I'd share this experience, and if you ever want to use it on your channel, feel free. I know that it's not super exciting, but it was sure enough to jolt my nervous system. I have a second encounter that's similar, involving something pushing an entire tree across the road from the same house one evening. I was out wandering alone, and a plethora of terrifying paranormal experiences if you're ever interested. Anyway, thank you for your time, and God bless you and the entire Dogman family. Alright folks, I definitely have my own opinion on this video. Before I share mine, I want to hear yours. But anyway, guys, I really do appreciate all the support and kindness. Your kindness is just immeasurable. The community you guys have created is mind-blowing to me. The support for each other is truly awesome. You guys are the reason this channel continues to grow and go. People want to be a part of your group in the community section. Wow. Please stay safe, happy, healthy, and ever vigilant. Please keep an eye on your children, your pets, your family, and friends. These creatures are real and they are out there. Share a little bit of information with the people that you love and care about, and it may just help save their life someday. God bless you all.